Welcome to Courtney on Health, heard on MalcolmPresents.com, a streaming service that produces its own programming. So tune us in and go to our shows. It's MalcolmPresents.com. Welcome, Courtney. Welcome, Maxine.
Welcome.
And today we're studying the frozen world. Take it over, Max. Introduce us.
Oh, right. Frozen. That was a popular, animated piece on our favorite company, Disney. Let it go.
Let it go. Let it
We're
go.
gonna we're gonna let it go. So here we are. Hi, Courtney again, and hi, Malcolm. Welcome to Courtney on Health, a podcast Zoomcast series that focuses on one's overall health and well-being with tips on nutrition and exercise and all sorts of great stuff given by Courtney Gravenese, who's a registered dietitian with a Master of Science degree in nutrition and applied physiology. Courtney is an experienced nutritional and health consultant in the New York metro area and way out there. As many places as you can go. That's where she is. And will help guide you on a path to wellness and health. So Courtney has some props there, and they're frozen, which is why we mentioned let it go. But we don't want to let it go too long or they will freeze. And that brings us to our topic, which is about frozen veggies and fruit. So I'll just a slight little background. In 1925, the Brooklyn-born entrepreneur, yay Brooklyn, Clarence Birdseye, sound familiar, invented a machine for freezing packaged fish that would revolutionize the storage and preparation of food. Maxon Food Systems of Long Island used Birdseye's technology, it's called the double belt freezer, to sell the first complete frozen dinners to airlines of all places in 1945. Soon thereafter, the Swanson Company, Swanson, Hungry Man, all that, transformed how Americans ate dinner and lunch. Remember those TV dinners way back when? So during the COVID-19 lockdowns, Americans began snapping up frozen meals, vegetables, fruits, and more. And according to the American Frozen Food Institute, nearly 50% more was spent on frozen produce and meals in April 2020 over the previous year. That's a huge jump. Are frozen and canned fruits and veggies nutritionally sound? While frozen and canned foods are certainly more convenient, are they really as healthy as fresh fruits and veggies? And are they more budget friendly? Courtney will give us some good info on this episode about the nutritional values and savings associated with canned and frozen foods. So Courtney, how you want to start this off? There's you have an array of veggies there frozen. So they'll probably be unfrozen by the time we're done.
That's all right. That's okay. We'll talk about refreezing, but hopefully they won't defrost too quickly. So hello to both of you. So yeah, I thought it would be important I hope this is a reinforcement for people to hear about the affordability, the nutrition value, and how it can help decrease food waste, the benefits of frozen fruits and vegetables. Because unfortunately, I keep hearing a lot of demonizing of the whole category of fruits and vegetables. And you guys know we talk about this enough on the show. We're always trying to find ways to up fruit and vegetable intake for folks. And if we keep placing these barriers in between fruits and veg and people, we're never going to help and encourage and educate people to have more. So I'm here to explain, reinforce, go through some of the myths that we hear about with fruits and veg, and some of the benefits of them. These are just some of my favorites that I have here, but everybody can have their own. So I'm not talking about veg and fruits that you freeze on your own at home, which by the way is great for keeping these fruits and veg on hand and for decreasing food waste. I'm talking about the ones that are already frozen in the store. So you mentioned Birdseye, Maxine. Mm-hmm. So there's obviously name brands like Birdseye, but almost every grocery store has their version These just happen to be Stop and Shop that I have here, but every grocery store has their version of frozen produce. So I would encourage you to explore your favorite grocery store, check out their brands, and I'll give you tips and tricks on what to look for when you do find them. So
Yeah,
let's start with nutrition. Go ahead, Malcolm.
Are we talking about just produce, with fruit and vegetables, or are we going to get into
I am just talking fruits and vegetables because there is very clear benefit to frozen, and in some cases can, and I'll talk about that. So no, I am not talking about, I know Max mentioned like the Hungry Man. I'm not talking about lean
dinners?
cuisine,
No.
frozen dinners. I'm talking
Right.
specifically frozen fruits
Okay.
and vegetables. So thank you for clarifying that. So affordability. So we know that many times frozen fruits and vegetables are going to be a much more economical choice for families, particularly when they go on sale in stores. Many times they go on sale. You can buy 2 for a certain price, 3 for a certain price, and it makes a lot of sense, A, if you have the freezer space, and B, if you or your family blows through that much. So there's no downside to bringing them home and purchasing them when they are on sale. So let's face it, what keeps people from eating fruits and vegetables a lot of the time is accessibility coupled with price. So if we can minimize one of those barriers by making it a little bit more reasonable for them, that it can fit into their budget, well, then that may help a lot of folks bump up their fruit and vegetable intake. So,
and also it is accessible in supermarkets. They
Yeah.
have big frozen sections, and a lot of it is fruits and vegetables. And also, I mean, I'll ask after about organic frozen
Yeah.
versus the other ones. But yeah, you're right. I think it covers both bases, actually.
Yeah, no, so you're right. And a lot of these bigger stores, even in smaller stores, there's usually a freezer section. Now, for people who follow me and who've listened, it's like, wait a minute, you told me to eat the perimeter, all the fresh stuff all the time. And yes, that is absolutely the case. Choose fresh when you can, but I'm really trying to, encourage options when that is just not economically feasible, or just like we mentioned, these stores just don't have a whole lot of fresh produce there. So let's figure out a way to basically make frozen vegetables, let's give them a little zhuzh. Let's make them sexy, right? So people feel like they can, they can buy them. So they are more affordable options. I feel like the nutrition value, blogs, influencers, there's so much information, unfortunately misinformation, about the nutrition value of frozen fruits and vegetables. So let's tackle that right away. Assuming that let's start with vegetables, assuming they do not have sauce on them, they don't have a lot of preservatives, they don't have a lot of salt on them, fruits don't have a lot of don't have added sugar. Assuming all of that, when we look at the nutrition value of frozen versus fresh, there is very little, and there is lots and lots of research to support this. There is very little difference in the nutrition profile of fresh versus frozen. Why? Because typically, firstly, they are picked in season, which a lot of times we're eating produce, they may be fresh, but it might not necessarily be in season. And it might have come from a part of the world that's not necessarily nearby. So in that transit period, it might have lost nutrition value. Remember, vitamins are very volatile. They don't like light a lot. They don't do well with excessive heat. There's lots of things that can break down the vitamin content. So in some cases, you're actually better off with the frozen version than you are with off-season fresh. Certainly if you pick up a head of broccoli, fresh broccoli, and it's like wobbling, I'm not saying something folks don't already know, right? Clearly that's not something you should be bringing home. It's past its prime. So frozen veg are typically picked in season. There's something called flash frozen, which Maxine, you alluded to, that process that first there's it's called blanching. So many of you already know what that is, but for those of you who don't, you take the fruit or the vegetable and it's basically very, very quickly boiled. And I mean very quickly, just for a second. And what that allows is a process that creates a better texture in the fruit or the vegetable, or preserves flavor and preserves color without using any preservatives. So it's important for folks to know these don't have preservatives added to them. They're flash frozen after they've been blanched, and they're put in containers, and then they go into the freezer section. So it's a very, clean process, smooth process. And like I said, many times the veg are picked and the fruits are picked in season. So nutrition value, very, very similar.
Yeah,
Are-
people
are
don't,
there-
the nutrition value is a big thing that
Mhm.
people are questioning. So to know that they were, flash frozen at the prime, that they were in their prime, and so when you get it and you defrost it or whatever you do,
Mhm.
I mean, I had the question, if you're going to microwave it, is it taking away from that nutrition versus, stovetop cooking?
Mhm.
Just a quick question on that.
Yeah, so microwaving, as you may be aware, is a very uneven process of heating. So the reason why the microwaving might not be the best way, and I know we all do it, and it's totally fine. I'm not saying never do this. I'm just saying that uneven heating means that that product has to go back into the microwave several times in order to get consistent heat throughout the veg. And every time you put it through there, that microwaving is going, not entirely, but it is going to affect some of the nutrition, color, texture that frozen vegetable is going to have. So I would say if you have the availability, and I realize folks have different appliances in their kitchen. If you have the availability to steam them, that would be the best way to preserve that color, preserve the nutrition, and certainly taste. You want it to taste good, right? And you can mix them into, this is if you're going to cook them, you can mix them into, many different recipes. I think frozen vegetables lend themselves nicely into soups, into stews. I, on a regular basis, make a pasta dish with frozen peas. So I do buy, like when they do 3 for whatever they are on sale, I do buy them in bulk like that. So they lend themselves very nicely in recipes like that. Are they going to be the same as if you roast broccoli? Is frozen broccoli going to roast up the same way fresh broccoli will? No, it's not going to, because there's moisture there. But there's, as long as you're flexible with the recipes in which you're using these veg, it is a wonderful, wonderful option to be able to use them like that. And if you're a smoothie fan, if you're buying frozen, let's just say you're buying spinach to put in a smoothie, and in your smoothie you typically would put frozen fruits, frozen veg, or even ice in there. Well, frozen spinach is actually perfect for a smoothie because it already is very cold. It's obviously frozen, so it blends nicely into something like that. And you'll notice that a lot of the fruits, like this ginormous bag of
Wow,
cherry,
that is a big bag.
it's huge. They even say on it, perfect for smoothies. And something like cherries, I don't know if the last time you guys purchased cherries, but they can be $6, $7, $9, $10 a pound, and you get like 5 cherries. So,
Yeah.
If something like this for very expensive fruit, and cherries typically are, it really brings it down to a fruit that you may never have because A, you can't get them, and B, they're just too darn expensive, to something that you might actually incorporate into your diet.
And they're healthy for you.
Very much so.
Cherries are really, really good. And you can put strawberries in there too in a smoothie.
Yeah.
There's fruits that are really frozen fruits that you just throw it in,
Yeah.
What could be easier than that, right?
Oh, it's wonderful. And then the other one I have here, and again, there's a huge section, but edamame, certainly, I actually think edamame is more available to folks in a frozen form than in fresh form. Usually in the summer, at least in the Northeast, or in farmers markets in the Northeast, we'll see fresh soybeans, but that's not often. So in the case of something like edamame, where unless you're buying it frozen, the likelihood of you finding it is very, very small. So this, once again, brings a veg to your plate that you might not normally have access to.
Right.
So
there's a lot of good stuff. I mean, you also mentioned, I don't know how far you want, we're in on the frozen, but what about the canned versions of things?
yeah.
I mean,
Um,
how does that stock, a lot of people get down on that too. They
Yeah.
go, oh, it's salty, it's sweet, it's this and that. So what do you suggest?
Sure, sure. So, again, we're all coming from different places, right? So if I'm talking to somebody who never has access to vegetables because they can't afford them or whatever the reason is, and if the only option is canned, of course, my option is going to be choose canned, choose ones that have the least amount of added sugar, the least amount of added salt, and they have come a long, long way. But to be fair, whereas frozen and fresh are very, very close in terms of their nutrient profile, canned versus fresh, there is a larger discrepancy in terms of the nutrition profile, just because of the canning process. The preservative, even if it's a natural preservative, that what's being put in there is going to affect the flavor, it's going to affect the taste, and in many cases, just because of time, things like vitamin C content will definitely lessen over time. So I would say that would be the last choice, but if it's your only choice, again, look for that sodium content. Look for added sugars, look for the amount of preservatives that are being put in there and flavorings and things like that, and try and choose a product that has the least of those. And just 1 second back to the frozen, and then I'll finish up on the canned. The same rules apply for frozen, by the way. All it should say on that ingredient list, the nutrition fact list, is whatever veg or fruit we're talking about. So in this case, cherries. In this case, peaches. That's it. None of these have anything else added to them at all. No sugar, no salt. It's just the veg. That's what you want to look for when you really want to compare fresh to frozen. For canned, I mean, some people consider beans, a protein. It's a carbohydrate. It's a veg. It definitely floats between those two. Canned beans happens to be something that I always encourage. You guys have heard me talk about the fact of how wonderful it is. It's a great pantry item.
Chickpeas.
Chickpeas, yeah,
Yeah,
they're
I mean,
wonderful.
they're
So
like
I
the
think you
first.
should have no hesitation when it comes to canned beans. Look for ones without salt if possible, but rinse them if there is salt in there. We know that that removes some of the salt. They now have the BPA free lining, so consumers should feel much more comfortable about choosing canned products. And I will tell you, I'm a fan of the one place where I think canned over frozen makes a difference in terms of taste and texture is corn. Vacuum seal, it's vacuum sealed. So if I'm being totally honest, really fresh corn is so far and away better than
Right.
any other version of it. But if it's winter and it's a recipe that calls for corn, I would almost always choose canned, vacuum sealed, canned versus frozen because of the nice snap texture. Once you do anything to that frozen corn, it almost immediately kind of collapses down. So those would be two examples of canned foods that I would suggest, certainly if you're open to it, that you should not have any hesitation of choosing those when possible.
Now, do they have any end dates on these packages, either frozen or canned? Do you have to use by a certain time, or can you store it forever?
No, certainly not forever. The cans are going to have a longer runway, much longer runway. And I remember we spoke about this. Eventually, there'll be two choices. It's going to be a best by and use by. So whatever that date is, use by is whatever that date is, you should have consumed it. Best by is you can have it, it's just not going to be at its peak. So canned goods can stay on shelves for years. And frozen, not so much. Typically, you're going to have probably like a 6-month window. Make sure you don't go through a defrost, refreeze cycle too many times. The crystallization that forms on frozen fruit, which is why after we finish, I'm like going to run over to my freezer. That will absolutely affect the flavor and the texture of the fruit. Once those crystals form on the fruits and the veg, it definitely affects the flavor and the taste. But usually you've got a good long, I think I just bought these, and let me see what's on here. Yeah, I mean, this is good, like for months. So
that brings me to a question. It's a It's a strange question, I have to admit, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Okay.
So, if you were stockpiling for the apocalypse and your escape shelter needed to be filled, would you
Mhm.
use canned items or frozen items, depending? I mean, what would be the safety? I mean, to me, I think
Well,
I know the
you
answer.
gotta go canned, and you
Gotta go
also
canned.
have
There you
to,
go.
you gotta go canned, because who's
Canned.
gonna, if it truly is the apocalypse.
Sorry, I was trying to think of something a little out there
That's
when I was
okay.
going.
We can be
Can't
humorous about this. There's no
sometimes.
dry ice in the apocalypse, nor your
Right,
generator
okay.
eventually is gonna run out.
That's
Speaking of which, you
true.
should have a handheld can opener, not an
Right.
electric can opener.
Absolutely. If you're that should be on one of our topics. What
See,
foods to
there
pack
it is.
in your escape shelter? So hey, there are many people who have them. So it's not something that it's more than we think, which is, I had to do something once a couple of years ago, and it was like I was mortified. I was mortified, really. And then
Yeah.
you have the ultra uber rich who have like incredible spaces.
Bunkers, right?
They have bunkers.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
just nuts. But we're going to try to, let's go back to the happy note.
Yeah, no. So anyway, so yeah, so everything, but I think it was so important because it makes me crazy when I hear about, frozen's horrible, definitely never canned, and even like canned. So if you're going to buy like canned fruit, for example, once again, fruit can be expensive. You guys know that. And if I'm working with a family and, mom can't, dad can't, swing fresh, let's just say peaches. Okay, well then you can use, the cups of peaches, choose the ones that, and there is a big difference among canned, cupped canned fruit. So I'm not talking about fruit cocktail that's all the tail bits and pieces of stuff with a ton of sugar in it. I'm talking about pineapple in its own juice, peaches in its own juice. So there's a long line of these. Look for them. Again, you want to see that the fruit should be first, whatever fruit is sort of being highlighted or promoted, and you want to look for very few other ingredients in there. You will see vitamin C and citric acid a lot, particularly with fruits, because they will oxidize and get brown. So don't be surprised if you see that. It's totally fine. You want to avoid a whole lot of extra sugar, and you also want to avoid some of the artificial sweeteners. So minimal ingredients, and it's not a bad thing to have on hand, certainly in a pinch, but more so for really to try and get that fruit and vegetable intake up, which is such a problem for so many families.
Right. There's just a lot to, think about when you shop and keeping your family healthy. And then, I look at cans. If I don't get that much can, I do get, like I said, chickpeas, stuff like that. My mom, when we couldn't get, she loved pineapple. She would always try to get the real thing. In Brooklyn, it wasn't always easy to find a pineapple certain times of year because they came from Hawaii.
Right.
That's like mostly, I don't know where else they grow it. But it mostly Hawaii, and so she loved pineapple, but she would get a can of Dole pineapple. It's closest thing to Hawaiian pineapple we can find, because the Dole it was really funny. So we would have pineapple from the can and
Yeah, I remember, growing up, my mother never bought frozen vegetables or canned vegetables. It was always to go down. There were the corner vegetable store at Palumbo's in Coney
there were a lot
Island.
of vegetable stores on Brighton Beach Avenue, tons of them.
And you could buy, and those days you could do every day, you could do a little shopping. You didn't have to, because it was like 2 steps away.
Yeah,
You
my
go down
mom
from
would.
the apartment house, go to the vegetable store, buy what's fresh. Generally the vegetable guy would tell you, oh, this is great, it tastes good,
Yeah,
and you
I
buy
remember
something for,
going. Sure.
yeah, and you buy something for the day or for 2 days.
Yeah, I would get sent to the veggie store, then fruits, and they knew me. And my parents would give me a couple of, a few bucks there. Pick this, give me a little list. But you can get it.
Listen, which is great. And I think if people have that, I think cities, people who live in the certain parts of the cities where you might be walking by that grocery store, certainly, I mean, if you have that ability, clearly buying fresh produce every single day is a gift, quite frankly, and it's really nice to be able to do that. But when you think about, people in very rural areas or these food deserts within cities where walking to go find fresh produce is really not going to be part of their day. Those are, and there's a lot of folks fit into that category. We live in a super big country, so we got to try and make this a little bit more accessible for all. And I thought about this. I'm like, I got to get this message out, because if I see one more influencer discouraging, anything frozen or nothing out of a can, I may jump through the street and strangle him or her.
Well, there's one good note. You were talking about, underserved communities, and in Brooklyn, in Williamsburg, one of the schools, a couple of schools, I think, they have started community gardens. They're giving gardening to the kids, and they do. I think they do it actually in Mount Kisco here. It's not, not underserved, served. Either way, the communities are becoming more, attuned to having kids know how to grow something, and then they grow, and then they have excess stuff, and they can bring it to a food bank, or they can bring it. It's, to me, I thought that was just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, did Michelle Obama start something? Did Michelle Obama start something like that in elementary schools?
Well, she's very much intact with what they're giving as lunches in school, and trying to get kids to eat better, and to I think, I don't know what program it was, but she's pretty on top of it still. I mean, I think there was an article recently in the Times or somewhere about that too, that she continues to try to push it, push healthy foods to kids.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, a couple of things. So to your point, Maxine, a lot of schools now are doing school gardens, and they're doing exactly what you're talking about. And they have, for one, they have parents take care of the garden over the summer and pull what they have. And typically the produce is delivered over to local food pantries, which is wonderful. So that's a way to get fresh vegetables to communities that might not have it. So it's a really nice thing to be able to see. I have seen more of these urban gardens when I take the train into the city. It's really nice to be able to see that. And then I know a lot of people have a lot of things to think about, but if it's any motivation to encourage some frozen fruit and vegetable intake, if that fits within your world, we do know that it can actually help reduce food waste as well. So not only in the home, but along the whole supply chain. So I know we're not going to get into that right now, but
that's a whole other topic, actually.
Yeah, a whole nother topic, but it can help. First of all, it minimizes how much you bring in that you might end up just throwing out. And then it helps on the front end, from the farmer all the way to the companies that actually package it. So
yeah, there's a lot in that, the food waste problem, and people are understanding it's happening. But when you see documentaries like Wasted, which was actually produced by Anthony Bourdain, it was one of the last projects he did, but he was right on target with what he has seen. The man went around the world. Food was his life. And when he, saw the stuff being thrown out, tons and tons of food that people can use. And because there was nothing wrong with it. It was just, at that point, too much of it. But now, the circles are changing a bit. So we have, but the frozen food, it's a go-to for me. I think, I always have, the broccoli, cauliflower, spinach in the house. Especially in the winter, but so it's always good to know that it's there and it's nutritional, and it's also from a budget point, it's good.
There you go.
So there you go.
Yeah, then I mean now food, produce, and it's crazy when you go shopping.
Yeah, it is.
It's very expensive. So more an option. So I'm gonna go throw these in the freezer.
All right.
Okay, put it in the freezer.
I think the props are melting. They're melting. So I'm gonna.
It's at the end of the show. We have less than a minute left.
Okay, so I'm
say
gonna
your
go.
goodbyes.
I'm gonna say my goodbyes. So So Courtney and Malcolm, thanks for being here, and thanks for joining us for Courtney on Health. To get more info, follow Courtney on her Facebook page, which is Courtney on Health, on Instagram and TikTok at CLG Wellness. Visit her website, CourtneyGravenese.com. For past shows, go to MalcolmPresents.com and theManyShadesOfGreen.com. This has been Courtney on Health, Smart Sound Nutrition, Strong Safe Fitness, and we will catch you again next time.
See you next time. Bye, guys.
By the way,
guys.
this might be a good show for people to eat more vegetables because they don't have to go shopping in a vegetable store. They could buy frozen and keep it in the freezer.
Right.
And-
You know what your
and-
moms would always say, eat your veggies.
Eat your veggies.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Anyway, guys,
Bye-bye.
thanks
Take
much.
care.
See you next week. Bye.
See you next week. Bye.